I was knee-deep in fixing my irrigation system when I heard the rumble of a diesel engine that didn't belong on my property. Looking up from the muddy trench I'd been digging, I saw something that made my blood pressure spike faster than a spooked bull. A bright yellow tow truck backing up toward my John Deere 5075E. Hey! I shouted, dropping my wrench and scrambling out of the ditch. What the hell do you think you're doing? The tow truck driver, a skinny guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, rolled down his window. Sorry man. Got a call about an abandoned farm equipment. Lady said it's been sitting here for weeks and needs to be removed. That's when I saw her. Standing at the edge of my property line like some sort of suburban sentinel was Linda Crenshaw, the self-appointed HOA president of Meadowbrook Estates, the cookie-cutter subdivision that had sprouted up next to my family's ranch 5 years ago like mushrooms after rain. Linda was everything you'd expect from an HOA Karen. Perfectly styled blonde hair that hadn't moved since 1987, designer workout clothes that had never seen actual exercise, and an expression that suggested she'd been sucking on lemons for the better part of a decade. She stood there with her arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face like she'd just solved world hunger. "Excuse me," I called out, marching toward the property line. "This is MY Tractor on MY property." Linda's smirk widened. "Actually, Jake, according to county records and our HOA covenant, this eyesore has been visible from our community for far too long. It's affecting our property values." I stopped dead in my tracks. Eyesore? This was a working ranch that had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather had cleared this land with his bare hands and a mule. My father had built it into one of the most respected cattle operations in the county. And now this woman, who'd moved here from some sterile suburb in Dallas, was calling my equipment an eyesore? Lady, this isn't your jurisdiction. This is private property, and that tractor is exactly where it needs to be. Linda pulled out her phone and started reading from it like she was delivering a sermon. Section 4.2 of the Meadowbrook Estates Protective Covenants clearly states that all adjacent properties must maintain aesthetic standards that don't negatively impact our community's visual appeal. I couldn't help but laugh. Your covenants don't apply to my ranch. I was here first. Well, that's debatable, she sniffed. And regardless, we have rights as a community to protect our investments. The tow truck driver was looking back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. I could see him calculating whether this job was worth the drama. "Look, buddy," I said to him, "this woman has no authority here. This is my tractor, my property, and if you try to tow it, you'll be stealing." Linda stepped forward, her voice rising to that particular pitch that can shatter glass and summon HOA board meetings. "I have documentation. I have pictures showing this. This machinery has been an eyesore for weeks. It's been here for weeks because I use it. This is a working ranch." "A working ranch?" She laughed, and it sounded like fingernails on a chalkboard. "You have 12 cows and a rusty fence. My subdivision has more grass than your entire operation." That hit a nerve. Times had been tough lately. Drought had been brutal on the pastures, and I'd had to sell off most of my herd just to keep the ranch afloat. But this land meant everything to me. It was my heritage, my future, and I'd be damned if some HOA princess was going to tell me how to manage it. "Listen here, Linda," I said, stepping closer to the property line. "Those 12 cows and that rusty fence have been feeding families in this county since before your little suburb was even a twinkle in some developer's eye. And this tractor?" I pointed to my John Deere with pride. "This tractor has put food on tables and kept this community running when your precious HOA members were still living in apartments and dreaming of their white picket fences." Linda's face was turning red, but she wasn't backing down. Your operation is bringing down the entire neighborhood. Do you know what houses in Meadowbrook Estates were selling for before people had to look at your barnyard every day? Probably more than they're worth," I muttered. "I'll have you know that comparable homes in similar communities without agricultural interference sell for 15 to 20% more." The tow truck driver cleared his throat. Folks, I'm gonna need to see some paperwork before I move anything. Title, ownership documents, something official." Linda's eyes lit up like she'd just been handed a winning lottery ticket. "I have a court order." My heart sank. "Hey, what now?" She marched back to her pristine white Mercedes SUV and returned with a folder thick enough to choke a horse. "I filed a complaint with the county about your property maintenance violations, and Judge Morrison agreed that the equipment constitutes a public nuisance." I snatched the papers from her hands and started reading. The legal jargon was thick, but the gist was clear. Unless I could prove the tractor was actively and regularly used for legitimate agricultural purposes, it would be considered abandoned equipment and subject to removal. This is ridiculous, I said. It's not abandoned. I used it yesterday. Yesterday? Doing what? Linda's voice dripped with skepticism. I was moving hay bales from the north pasture to the barn. Prove it. And that's when I realized I might be in trouble. I'd actually used the tractor 2 weeks ago, not yesterday. And I didn't have any witnesses except for my border collie Rex, who wasn't likely to hold up in court. Linda saw the doubt in my eyes and pounced. You can't prove it because it's not true. That tractor has been sitting in the same spot for over a month, and I have dated photographs to prove it. Sure enough, she pulled out her phone and started scrolling through what looked like a comprehensive surveillance operation. Pictures of my tractor from every angle, time-stamped and GPS located. You've been taking pictures of my property? I asked, incredulous. It's called documentation, Jake. Something every responsible community member should do when dealing with situations like this. The tow truck driver was getting antsy. Look, I got other calls today. Someone needs to figure this out quick, or I'm leaving. That's when inspiration struck. Or maybe it was desperation. But I remembered something my grandfather used to say, sometimes you gotta fight fire with fire and bureaucracy with bureaucracy. Hold on, I said, pulling out my own phone. Before you tow anything, I want to call the county extension office. If this is about agricultural use, I want an agricultural expert to verify the situation. Linda's confident expression flickered for just a moment. That's not necessary. The court order is perfectly clear. Oh, it's very necessary, I said, already dialing. Because if this tractor is being used for legitimate agricultural purposes, which it is, then your court order is based on false information. And filing false information with a court is perjury. The word perjury hit Linda like a slap. Her face went from red to pale in about 2 seconds. I got connected to Tom Rodriguez at the county extension office. Tom had known my family for years and understood the situation immediately. Jake, you need me to come out there and verify agricultural use? Tom's voice was calm and professional, but I could hear the amusement underneath. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While we waited, Linda tried everything she could think of to get that tow truck driver to move my tractor. She offered him extra money, threatened to call his supervisor, and even tried to convince him that I was mentally unstable and couldn't be trusted. Lady, the driver finally said, I ain't moving nothing until this gets sorted out proper. I don't need this kind of headache. Linda was pacing back and forth like a caged tiger, muttering about property values and community standards. I, on the other hand, was starting to enjoy myself. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a bully realize their victim isn't going to roll over. You know, Linda, I said, leaning against my tractor, I've been thinking about your property values argument. She stopped pacing. What about it? Well, I've been considering expanding my operation. Maybe getting into goats. Did you know goats are great for clearing brush? Of course they can be pretty loud. Especially the billy goats during mating season. Linda's eye twitched. You wouldn't dare. Or pigs. Pigs are fantastic. Great return on investment. Of course, the smell can carry for miles when the wind's right. This is harassment. No, this is farming. Which, in case you forgot, is what people do on ranches. That's when Tom pulled up in his county extension truck. Tom was everything Linda wasn't, practical, down-to-earth, and actually knowledgeable about agriculture. He took one look at the situation and started laughing. Linda, what have you gotten yourself into now? He asked. This isn't funny, Tom. That equipment is a public nuisance. Tom walked over to my tractor and started his inspection. He checked the oil, looked at the tires, examined the implements, and even started her up. The John Deere roared to life with a satisfying rumble that probably made Linda's teeth ache. Jake, when's the last time you used this? Tom asked over the engine noise. 2 weeks ago, moving hay. Before that, it was bush hogging the back 40. Tom nodded and shut off the engine. Then he walked the property line, examining the fence, the pastures, and even checking on my cattle. After about 15 minutes, he came back to where Linda and I were still glaring at each other. Well? Linda demanded. Is it agricultural or isn't it? Tom pulled out his official county extension notepad and started writing. This is definitely an active agricultural operation. The tractor shows clear signs of regular use, the property is being maintained for livestock, and everything here is consistent with legitimate ranching activities. Linda's face went through several colors that probably don't exist in nature. But it's been sitting in the same spot. Where else would you park a tractor? Tom asked reasonably. Under a tree for shade, close to the barn for maintenance, near the implements. This is exactly where any sensible rancher would park their equipment. He handed me an official county extension certificate declaring my property an active agricultural operation. This should take care of any legal questions. The tow truck driver didn't wait for Linda's response. He was already unhooking his chains and preparing to leave. "Y'all have a good day now," he called out as he drove away. Linda stood there holding her court order, looking like someone had just told her that HOA dues were being abolished nationwide. "This isn't over," she said, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Actually, it is," I replied. "But Linda, I want you to know something. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about property values and community standards." She looked up hopefully, probably thinking I was about to apologize or offer some kind of compromise. "I've decided you're absolutely right. This community does need better standards. So I'm going to file a complaint with the county about your subdivision's runoff water that's been flooding my south pasture every time it rains." Linda's mouth fell open. "What runoff water?" "The runoff from all those concrete driveways and sidewalks in your development. It's been washing fertilizer and chemicals from your lawns onto my grazing land. That's actually a violation of agricultural protection laws." I was making some of this up as I went along, but Tom was nodding seriously. "That is a legitimate concern," he said. "Agricultural operations have protection from suburban contamination. And," I continued, warming to my theme, "I'm also going to look into the noise ordinances. All those lawn mowers and leaf blowers every Saturday morning have been spooking my cattle. Stressed cattle don't gain weight properly, which affects my agricultural productivity." Linda looked like she was about to have a stroke. "You can't. That's not. We have a right to maintain our properties. Just like I have a right to maintain mine," I said. "The difference is I was here first and agricultural operations have legal priority over residential developments in this county." Tom was clearly enjoying himself now. "Jake's right about that. Agricultural protection laws are pretty comprehensive. Existing farming operations have significant rights when it comes to conflicts with newer developments." Linda gathered up her papers and started marching back toward her Mercedes. "We'll see about this," she called over her shoulder. "Looking forward to it," I called back. After she drove away, Tom and I shared a good laugh. "You know," Tom said, "you could actually file those complaints. The runoff issue is real. I've seen it happening during heavy rains. And the agricultural protection laws would back you up." "I might just do that," I said. "But first I think I need to expand my operation. Maybe get some roosters. Free-range roosters that like to crow at dawn." Tom laughed. "Just make sure you follow all the proper agricultural guidelines. Wouldn't want Linda to have any legitimate complaints." That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer and called my dad, who'd retired to Arizona but still liked to hear about ranch life. "So let me get this straight," Dad said after I told him the whole story. "This HOA lady tried to tow our tractor because she thought it was an eyesore?" "That's right." "The same tractor your grandfather bought new in 1987? "The very same." Dad was quiet for a moment. Then he started laughing. "Son, your grandfather would have loved this. He always said the land would outlast all the people who tried to change it." "What do you think I should do about Linda and her HOA?" "Well," Dad said thoughtfully, "your grandfather also used to say that good neighbors make good fences. But he was talking about neighbors who understood that country living means country sounds, country smells, and country equipment. So you think I should make peace with her? I think you should be exactly the neighbor she deserves. If she wants to play by city rules, show her what country rules look like." The next morning I got up early and fired up the John Deere. I had some legitimate work to do. The south pasture needed bush hogging and the irrigation ditches needed cleaning. But I also made sure to start at exactly 6 a.m., which is perfectly reasonable for agricultural work but probably not what the Meadowbrook Estates residents were used to. Around 8 a.m. my phone started ringing. "Linda." "Jake. Your tractor is incredibly loud." "Yeah, she's got a good strong engine. Grandfather always said you want equipment that sounds healthy." It woke up half the neighborhood. "Really? Most ranch families are up by 5:30. Y'all must be city folks." There was a long pause. "How long are you going to be working?" "Oh, I got a full day ahead of me. This pasture needs cutting, then I need to move some feed, check the water lines, maybe do some fence repairs. Could be working until dark." Another pause. "Every day." "Ranch work doesn't take days off, Linda. Animals need tending, equipment needs running, land needs maintaining. That's what farming is. But surely you could work quieter hours?" "Linda, are you trying to tell me when I can work my own ranch?" "No, but..." Because that would be the HOA overreach I was telling you about yesterday. I heard her take a deep breath. Jake, can we talk? I mean really talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. In person. Could you maybe show me around your property? Help me understand what you do here. That surprised me. You want a tour? Yes. I think maybe I don't understand ranching as well as I should. All right. How about this afternoon? I'll be done with the noisy work by then. Linda showed up at 2 p.m. wearing jeans and boots that looked like they'd never seen dirt. She also brought homemade cookies, which I had to admit was a nice gesture. These are beautiful, she said, looking out over my pastures. I never really looked at it from this angle before. Most people don't. They see the equipment and think, junk. But every piece has a purpose. I showed her around the property, explaining how everything worked together. The tractor that had caused all the trouble was just one part of a complex operation that had been running for decades. I had no idea, she said when we stopped by the cattle. I thought you just let them eat grass. There's a lot more to it than that. Rotation schedules, water management, health monitoring, breeding programs. Small operation like mine has to be efficient to survive. We were standing by the fence looking at my 12 remaining cattle when Linda asked the question I'd been dreading. What happened to the rest of your herd? I was quiet for a long moment. Drought. Bad market prices. Had to sell them off to keep the ranch going. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Not many people do. Pride, I guess. Linda nodded. I understand about pride. We walked back toward the house in comfortable silence. Finally she spoke up. Jake, I owe you an apology. A big one. Appreciate that. I moved here from Dallas because I wanted something different. Quieter. More authentic, I guess. But instead of embracing what was already here, I tried to make it like what I left behind. That's honest of you. The truth is, your ranch makes this place special. The HOA ladies and we were so focused on property values that we forgot about, well, actual value. Property values aren't evil, Linda. People work hard for their homes. No, but there's different kinds of value. Your ranch has history. Character. It's real in a way our subdivision isn't. We sat on my porch for a while, drinking iced tea and watching the cattle graze. Linda asked good questions about ranching and I found myself enjoying the conversation. So what happens now? She asked as the sun started getting low. Well, I'm still going to farm my land. Still going to run equipment when I need to. Still going to get up early and work late. I know. And we need to learn to live with that. And I'm still thinking about expanding. Maybe some chickens. Possibly goats. Linda winced. Goats are loud, aren't they? They can be. But they're also friendly. Kids love them. We do have a lot of families with children in the subdivision. Might be educational for them. Learn where food comes from. Linda smiled. You know what? You're right. Maybe instead of fighting the ranch, we should be celebrating it. How would you feel about hosting a community event? Show families what real ranching looks like. And that's how the first annual Meadowbrook Ranch Community Day was born. 3 months later, I had 200 people tour my property, pet my cattle, learn about agriculture, and gain a real appreciation for rural life. Linda turned out to be an excellent event organizer, and her HOA connections helped spread the word. Kids got to sit on the John Deere tractor that had started all the trouble, and parents learned that farming is a lot more complex and important than they'd realized. The event was such a success that we made it annual. It also led to some interesting business opportunities. Several Meadowbrook families started buying beef directly from me when I rebuilt my herd, and I even started offering tractor services for folks who needed brush cleared or fields mowed. Linda and I never became best friends, but we developed a mutual respect. She stopped trying to impose suburban standards on rural operations, and I made sure to be considerate about timing my noisiest work. The real victory, though, was bigger than just one conflict with one HOA president. Word got around about how I'd handled the situation, and other rural property owners started calling for advice when they ran into similar problems with encroaching developments. I learned something important through the whole experience. Sometimes the best way to handle a bully is not to fight them but to educate them. Linda wasn't evil, she was just ignorant about rural life and protective of her investment. Once she understood what ranching actually involved, she became an ally instead of an enemy. My grandfather used to say that the land teaches patience to those who pay attention. It took a while, but eventually both Linda and I learned that lesson. The John Deere still sits in the same spot where Linda first tried to have it towed. But now when Meadowbrook residents drive by, they don't see an eyesore. They see a symbol of the agricultural heritage that makes their community unique. And sometimes on quiet Saturday mornings, I still fire her up at 6 a.m. sharp. Just to make sure everyone remembers that this is still a working ranch with all the sounds, smells, and early hours that come with it. After all, some lessons are worth repeating.